is I'm about to do something that you're not supposed to do. You're not supposed to do it in podcasting. You're really not supposed to do it in conversations. But I'm going to try and I'm going to attempt to do that today. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to have 3 conversations in one. The reason why you're not supposed to do this is usually one conversation doesn't get completed. But what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to have 3 conversations in one. And with those 3 conversations, it's going to paint the bigger picture, the picture that I want to paint. And I'm going to try to paint. So follow along with me. 3 things happened over the past few days that sparked this topic. First one was, of course, Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat making it to the NBA Finals. First team since the New York Knicks, I believe, in 1999, to make it, to be an 8th seed and make it to an NBA Finals. And I also think that they will be if they win the NBA Finals, they will be the first team ever to beat 2 number ones, the number 1 in the West and the number 1 in the East. And we've also seen the run that Jimmy Butler has been on this playoffs, whether we talk about the 56 points against the Bucks or Game 7 win, the New York Knicks series, and at least the first 3 games of the Boston Celtics series. So Jimmy Butler's emergence and Jimmy Butler's playoff expertise and playoff excellence is one of the biggest, or is the first cog to this trio. The second cog was Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse getting introduced as the newest head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. And Nick Nurse was pretty much asked, do you want James Harden to return? Is James Harden returning? Is that what you want? And he pretty much he danced around it a little bit, but he ended it with saying that I would love James Harden back. And that's the second pillar. And the third pillar, shouts out to Nick Wright from FS1. Nick Wright said, if Jimmy Butler wins this year's championship, he would have Jimmy Butler above James Harden as an all-time great. Like, he would put Jimmy Butler ahead of James Harden. So, what I want to do is talk about James Harden and Jimmy Butler for a little bit. And we've been talking about greatness this entire episode. We just had a conversation about Nikola Jokic. I want to discuss how I view both Jimmy Butler and James Harden, and who would I rank higher? Because both are very fascinating. But let me say this. Both have very fascinating cases as to why one is better than the other or one is worse than the other. When we talk about James Harden, who, of course, is on the NBA 75, all NBA 75 team. For people that don't know, because I've said that a couple times, for people that don't know what that is, the NBA came out, 75 years, who has been the greatest players in that 75 years, and James Harden landed on that list. It's very everyone knows this, but I'll bring it back to light. At his height, in his Houston Rockets days, James Harden was one of the best, greatest scorers we've ever seen. Not just in the league at the time, in NBA history. He is one of the greatest scorers in NBA history. A lot of people talk about his ability to manipulate the refs and get to the line, but I would attest that that is a skill, and not everyone is able to do that. But we've seen multiple 60-point triple doubles from James Harden, 57, 58, 52, like 50. We've seen multiple games with James Harden to make you look and think, I don't know how one person is able to do that. Which kind of goes back to the original conversation, or the conversation we just had is, who is the best player in the world? There was a good couple of years where James Harden threw his name in that ring. Just because of the sheer talent or offensive talent that he is, and how his shooting ability and just his offensive viewpoint of the game was second to none. So with all that, what was the knock on James Harden? And arguably, what has been the knock on James Harden his majority of his career? That has been the playoffs. And how the greatness that we've seen in the regular season from James Harden doesn't appear when it's needed the most in the playoffs. Also, of course, we can also talk about the problem of there has been multiple times where James Harden's approach to the game has been questioned. And approach to the game hasn't been on the winning side. Now, I am a proponent of what you do off the court, what you do off the field is none of our business. But you also have to understand that, especially when you play a high intensity sport, that everything you do in life is going to affect the final product. So if you don't eat right, if you don't work out, if you don't get good sleep, if you don't have good company around you, if you don't put in the extra hours in working out or training, if you don't, take your craft 100% seriously, not saying that you can't have, extracurricular, or you can't do extracurricular activities, but if you don't put your craft at the forefront, you're not going to get out of it everything that you're hoping for. And that has always been a knock on James Harden majority of his career, which I thought is even more crazy, that even when he was dropping the 60-point triple doubles, that was still the conversation. But we saw every single time in the playoffs, James Harden fizzled out in the biggest moments. I think the worst one was probably against the Spurs, where I think Kawhi Leonard was out and another player was out, and James Harden was just god awful. So when we talk about the case of James Harden, do we talk about, how do you rank James Harden? Because if you just look at the regular season, like, oh yeah, that's James Harden. Like, James Harden is up there. There's a lot of people that was questioning, and there's a lot of people that put James Harden over Dwayne Wade just because of how good he's been in the regular season. But then when we also tack on the playoffs, it's like, ugh, But then you go over to Jimmy Butler, and it's almost completely opposite with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler is not the most offensively gifted player. It is shocking if Jimmy Butler gets a 40, 50 point game. That's just not in Jimmy Butler's repertoire. Jimmy Butler is going to more than likely guard the best guard or best player if it's relatively close to his height. and he's going to do the dirty things, the dirty work. He's gonna play defense. He's gonna dive for loose balls. He's gonna be the emotional engine that the Miami Heat need. However, Jimmy Butler in the regular season, I'm not gonna say he coasts, but maybe he just waits to turn on the postseason, because he was not on the All NBA 75 team, and he doesn't have a case when we talk about the regular season. Now, Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, however, is different. Jimmy Butler is one of this generation's best playoff player. Now, yes, it hasn't equaled a championship, but it kind of goes back to the Carmelo Anthony conversation we had last episode. It's kind of hard when you look at the players that's in this era. And Jimmy Butler, as great as he is, even at the apex of his greatness, he's not better than a lot of those players. However, again, in the playoffs, I mean, he led, even though it was the bubble, and a lot of people look at the bubble sideways. But if you look, even in the bubble, he led the Heat to the NBA Finals. This is the second NBA Finals Jimmy Butler is playing in, and he's played in what 3 Eastern Conference Finals. One of which he was a jump shot away from playing in his third NBA Finals. Because of the greatness of Jimmy Butler and the culture that the Heat have, they're always in contention to make some noise in the playoffs. So, to tie this all around and put a bow on this conversation, the question is, what do you value? And I'll answer for myself. I don't think Jimmy Butler has done enough to eclipse James Harden as far as all-time rankings, or, when we just talk about greatness. I don't think that Jimmy Butler has done enough to eclipse James Harden. However, I think I do also reward winning. And I think that winning plays a big part, or will play a big part in it, especially if Jimmy Butler wins the NBA Finals. Because I just look at the road that this NBA Finals at least. I just look at the road that he's been on, at least this season, losing the first playing game, having to play another playing game, then going up against the best team and arguably the best player at the time in Giannis Antetokounmpo, then going against the hottest team in the league, and that was the New York Knicks, and then going against arguably, probably one of, if not the best team in the playoffs or in the NBA, and that's the Boston Celtics. All while being the outside of probably Miami and the play-in, being the significantly lesser team. And now, if he were to win the NBA Finals, you would have beaten 2 number ones and beat arguably the best player in the world in Nikola Jokic, and arguably the best team in basketball in the Denver Nuggets. So I said all that to say, if Jimmy Butler does somehow win the NBA Finals this year, at least, or let me just say, win the NBA Finals, then yes, I agree with Nick Wright. I would probably rank Jimmy Butler over James Harden, because James Harden is a great regular season player and has done incredible things for the regular season, but when it's needed the most in the playoffs, James Harden has come up small every single time. It's not just a once. Like, think about it. Even think about it, man. Now that when he was in OKC, NBA Finals, he was awful in the NBA Finals. Now you attributed that and you got to chalk that up to, well, he's young, which is cool, man. The Rockets gets bounced out the first round or second round against Golden State, then bounced out the second round again against Golden State. Then you're in the Western Conference Finals, have a 2-1 or 3-2 lead. Actually, no, I think you get bounced by the Spurs. Then you're in the Eastern or Western Conference Finals. You have a 3-2 lead, and then in Game 7 at your crib, your team, led by you, proceeds to miss 27 straight threes? And then the next year you lose again. And you go to Brooklyn. Then that's when the injuries start piling up. So when James Harden is needed the most, he does not deliver. However, when Jimmy Butler is needed the most, especially if he wins his championship, he delivers. Oh, man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.